Right, you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Welcome everyone. 12 months has passed. A lot's changed. Ben's still in lockdown. I'm still living on the farm.
Yeah, I mean, I have hair, but it's much shorter.
I looked at what we said this time last year, and went into far too much detail. So this year, I think it's going to be very brief. Ben and I are just going to tell you what we think of the wines and perhaps what happened during vintage this year.
I like how that was. I like how that was the brief version of just drinking them and seeing what we say about them.
Ben, where's your help?
Well, when I tasted it, I mean, you sort of get used to that smell. There's a Farr style, which I really like. From a nerdy point of view, it's got that cut and that sort of tension. But also from an immediately pleasurable point of view, you've got plenty of upfront fruit. It's generous. And I think Chardonnay, certainly for people coming into wine drinking, their idea of Chardonnay is probably all over the shop. You know, they're hearing what their parents said, or they are seeing all the new kids on the block kind of styles. This is pretty fancy, incredibly approachable. I mean, I'll defer to you with how long you want to keep that, but the acid's great. I mean, I reckon it looks fantastic. I've been drinking longer than
I just find...
Maybe that's that. As in not because I'm older, just been here longer.
I haven't. I've been feeding cows and keeping kids out of chook poo. So I deserve a drink. I just find the fruit in these vintages tends to fall away a lot sooner than vintages like 12, 15, 18. I'm not sure why.
Don't you reckon that's cool from these wines don't need to rely merely on fruit forwardness. I think there's that when you say fruit falls away, surely then complexity.
The 2020, there's so little juice in such little berries that if we press it too hard, we're just going to get dryness. We're going to see characters of that wine that are far too oxidative, but we try not to be greedy because there isn't that much juice.
Yeah, and I guess that all comes down to sustainability. I mean, you're forced to take a fair bit of juice out because you can't go, let's not take more because you need to keep surviving.
Yep, exactly.
Well, I reckon it tastes great.
Yeah, I'm just in one of those moods of everything could be better today.
And I mean, it's, at least for one that you're saying you shouldn't necessarily keep for too long, there's also not much of it around.
No, there's not. So we're looking at 50% less, 40 to 50% less fruit. So 40 to 50% less wine. Viognier.
I love Viognier. Hugh and Hook recently said arguably the country's greatest Viognier.
Well, that's not something I want to hear. Kids are ringing my doorbell.
I think it looks awesome. One thing that I think about the Viognier, if you can still hear me, is that it's always got this kind of this shadow of the Chardonnay texture. You've got that really nice acid. You can smell some of that barrel work, but then you get that added layer of apricot, that kind of dried apricot note, all that ginger, all that spice. So it's kind of, for me, it's like this structure of Chardonnay with these other little bells and whistles on it. And I think it's fantastic.
I think there's more tension to this 20 than what there was to 19. 19, we spoke about in last year's video, which I think is still up on the website, where we were talking a lot about sun exposure and the flavour components that come from that, the decisions that are made based on the amount of sun burning versus protected fruit for acidity. I think 2020, we saw very little sun burning and exposure, but far more even ripening across the grapevines.
Is that you guys? Like, is that you sending Riki out and saying, leave more leaves on or anything, or it's just...
There wasn't much leaf.
Right.
There was very little leaf growth, but there was very little UV exposure late in the season. So I think there's harmony with everything that came about with the Viognier, and I think it shows in the wine.
And timing wise, like what's coming off the vines first? Viognier or
Viognier? Viognier is, yes. And that's because we're choosing to pick it earlier and earlier.
So like 10 years ago kind of thing, you were leaving it longer?
Yes, absolutely. 10 years ago, it was 13.5 to 14% alcohol and a pH of sort of 3.8 at bottling, where now we're sort of pH of 3.45 and an alcohol of 12.2.
Nice. Very much great. It's funny when you become, you guys are famous for Pinot and Chardonnay, and you also make these Rhone varieties. You didn't want to talk about it. People kind of forget that you make them, and I think they're awesome. That's what I like.
We make so little of it, it doesn't matter. It's great for everyone else that wants to drink it. We don't need everyone going out and wanting to try Viognier when there's so much Chardonnay to drink. Sangria.
All right. Find some red grapes. So home block?
Home block, the original home block. So we spoke about this again last year, the 2019, and how there was perhaps 3 different vintages within one. We had the fruit that was picked before a heat wave, the fruit that was picked during the heat wave at night, which is Sangria and by Farr Chardonnay, and then there was the fruit that was picked after the heat wave and very, very cool conditions after that, which prolonged the season no end, and Farside, Shiraz and the likes were picked at that stage. So it was a really fun vintage to make, because we're always on our toes about how we were going to approach the different fruit that was coming in within a 3-week, 4-week period. And we've seen enough of heat waves from 2014 to 2018 that we feel as though we're on top of our game when it comes to how to handle Sangria coming in at 32 or 33 degrees, and how we can maintain the tightness, the coolness, the persistence that we want to see it in this wine without the wine becoming too broad, too rich and undesirable for me anyway.
Yeah, I mean, if you say that 2019 was really hot and you smell that wine, there's nothing that sort of, there's nothing baked, there's nothing kind of dry red about it. It's still got perfume, still got lightness to it. I always think the Sangria is the prettiest. It looks great. Generally,
you see the seamless wine between Farside and Sangria. It's always more seamless. It's Sangria. Doesn't matter what we do to it, really. It always has a very similar nose. There's something alluring about it. Yeah, it's always been a sexy wine.
Yeah, it's great. And I think for a lot of people that drink Pinot, they don't see these top end expressions with that kind of perfume. And when you first smell Sangria or any of your aged Pinots as well, it's like, wow, that's what people talk about with Pinot, and they're that kind of really alluring smell that lots of Pinot don't offer. I remember that was sort of what hooked me. It's awesome.
Taking the second taste, it's
really spicy.
Really spicy, great texture, and the tannins are lining the back of my throat. As we speak.
Whole bunch, like for me, it's on the palate. I don't like it. It's sort of turned to a different kind of smell on the nose, but the palate, you see a little bit of that whole bunch, which I really like.
For 70% whole bunch, there's still a lot of stemmy characters that have evolved though. Like for people to try these wines out of barrel at 6 months, 12 months, people will go, oh, I can really see that character. But for me, now seeing it at 18 plus months, I'm really happy with the way it's evolved, the way that it's absorbed everything that we're throwing at it.
Yeah, it's really resolved. Farside? How far away, like as the crow flies, are these two sites?
I need to measure it. I need a drone, but...
a kilometre?
What do you think? 400 to 500 meters.
From your parents, I guess, goes down in the ditch, so that would make it bit. It seems further, but so not far, but a huge, like a big soil difference.
Up one slope, down another, and you get to the bottom corner.
That was great.
That is the wine that Sangreal, we set the benchmark probably 5 or 6 years ago. This is the way we want Sangreal to look every year.
Yep.
Far Side, I think, has only really come into its own in the last 3 or 4 releases.
Right.
It's got far more delicacy about it, far more refinement. There's a silkiness. There's still that dark fruit spectrum, but they are longer, finer tannins than what we perhaps had in the first 10 vintages. I think it was a lot more driven by dark fruit and then that vibrant, jumpy acidity and tannin. I think it's certainly come together in the vineyard more so than us worrying about what to do in the winery. I think vine age and the evolution of that site is just giving us greater expression.
Are you treating the vines differently across that kind of, even if it's only 500 meters? Are you doing different stuff to the vines?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Because of soil type. Right. The red soil versus the browns and the black soils, they just react differently to different cover crops, mulching, the depth that we work that soil.
Yep.
It's completely different beasts.
Right. It's really good.
You believe there's more separation between these two than there has been from the 17 or 18 vintage?
Separate. Look, to be honest, I reckon that's probably the best Far Side I've seen. And I think a lot of it comes down to perfume as well. Like it's got that really alluring smell. The texture's awesome. But it was funny, during vintage, there were people coming in saying how much they loved Far Side and loved Far Side. And in my head, I'm always going, oh, fuck, Sangreal's always my favourite. Telling that, you kind of see, and it's not one's right or someone's wrong, but it was just like, wow, you can see why that's been so kind of evocative for people. Because, I mean, that 19 looks phenomenal.
Yeah. I see the whole bunch component on the back end of Far Side where you see it at the front of Sangreal. It's contributed spiciness to different parts of the wine.
I don't know if today's just one of those days, but everything looks really spicy, like all those really aromatic kind of, I'm sort of seeing ginger and 5 spice in these wines that I don't often see so intensely.
So just something that the way that will evolve in the next 2 to 3 years, that's the thing that I can't wait to see. It has to be a positive because I've seen that in 17, we saw it in 15, 15's become just silk.
Hi, Clemmy.
Say hi, Ben.
Hi, Ben.
How you going?
Good.
Can you smell the wine?
So what are you doing around the vineyard this time of year? The fruit's off. What happens? You just you're sowing cover crops and stuff like that?
Yeah, cover crops are now in, waiting for the rain on Wednesday.
Right.
So we've mixture of red clovers, different legumes, grasses, and grasses vary from Vic Rye, Phalaris, Cocksfoot, again, depending on soils and how deep you want the roots to be in that soil for structure.
Structure as in holding it together? Is that what you mean?
Holding it together. So the sandy or loamy soils of something like GC Chardonnay, very little structure, so therefore we need far deeper rooted plants to hold that together so you don't see erosion.
Yep.
Where the soils of something like Sangreal are far richer and there's a good amount of clay at about 0.5 metre. So we are only really looking to inject nitrogen into that soil rather than looking for more carbon in that soil. And the nitrogen is being put in there, or the idea of nitrogen being put in the soil is because we use so much straw under the vines. And the breakdown of that straw leaches nitrogen out.
You helping, Clemmy? You driving the tractor, Clem?
Ben, ask you a question. You driving the tractor?
Yes.
Yes.
Very
What
good.
else did you do today?
Alone.
Oh, play with balloons. I'll come up in a minute.
Sounds busy.
I'll come up in a minute. Oh. All right, have you got, what do you have, Shiraz?
I got 19 Shiraz. Well, I say Shiraz. I don't know why you say Shiraz.
We just go with Syrah.
Shiraz.
Shiraz. Rosie.
Again, like, you know, the unspoken red grape that you also make that's amazing.
Yeah. We do have a lot of customers that only buy Shiraz from us, which I find pretty amazing, considering how Pinot-esque our Shiraz is.
Yeah, but you look at, you know, I was really blown away that we did that side by side of Clonakilla and your Shiraz. They were, you know, peas in a pod.
Yep.
And so to find that kind of elegance and spice, because I don't, you know, I'll have a glass of massive red wine sometimes, and it's like that's enough. But to have a richer red like Shiraz can be, that's still got that elegance and perfume. I mean, I think that's the funnest bit.
It was good to try Tim's wine versus ours. I think we had 2010, 2012. Perfume looked quite similar. Fruit looked fairly similar, but it was the way, how differently the two wines or two producers finished in your mouth.
Yeah.
It's 19 fairly difficult for Shiraz, amazingly, because of that heat wave that came through. We're thinking that, this is going to be completely overdone. But with the vines shutting down after the heat wave, this only got to about 12.3% alcohol at bottling. So it really is quite savoury, but it has a real savoury density about the wine. There's a heaviness in that mid palate, and then it lightens up and just glides.
For me, it kind of works. I mean, I don't know what your oak regimes are in the Shiraz, but that sort of, it's almost like cocoa and black olive, and then it kind of feels like that oak tannin just sort of takes on from there.
Yeah, it carries it. And we want to accentuate some of that cocoa characters in a year like this, because other years where you've got that sweeter fruit, yeah, you certainly don't want to introduce too much more sort of dark chocolate spectrum. But in a cooler year like this, the sweetness of the Viognier, I think, helps with that tannin of the oak as well.
Yeah.
And it's only 20% new oak that's generally put in by far Shiraz.
Right. Versus your Pinots, what are you doing there?
Far side in 19 was about 55%. Sangreal was 65, which is a touch off what 18 was, perhaps higher, but there was a lot more caution with the 19s, because we still weren't completely sure after fermentation whether or not that ripeness or sweetness of the vintage would have come through, and we didn't want to accentuate that with more sweet and new oak. And I think 10% is like, you could talk 3 or 4% means nothing, but once you a 5% swing in either direction is considerable, but 10 certainly makes a huge difference in a wine.
Yeah, because there's plenty of sweet fruit there. You know, it's ripe, but it's also got that other kind of layer of I reckon I did the haircut okay.
Show us your haircut, man.
Put your head closer to mine.
Yeah, no, you get it right. I don't know about the two front teeth, though.
I know. I took them out because he wasn't laughing. No. Hang on, he's buying things with my thumbprint. Which is the future. This is what you need to do. You just need to have children buying their parents' wine with their thumbprints. Give me 1 second. I think they look good. So just talking about that 2010, we tasted it during vintage. Like longevity for these kind of 19s. You mentioned the 2020 Chard you felt probably didn't have that kind of stuff in, but I mean, they look so good now, and they're kind of ripe for that evolution, I think.
Yeah, I think they've got the structure and the tannin, and they've got great vibrancy with the acidity that they've retained to do quite well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice. For me, it's not just like a one moment of perfume and then it changes after 10 minutes in the glass. Like they're so concentrated in not that they're heavy, but they're concentrated with all those good bits that doesn't kind of just fly away. Like it stays and stays and stays throughout the bottle.
Yeah. I just keep coming back to the refinement that we are now getting in these wines. And I love that there's so much up front. People just put their nose over these glasses, the first sip of the wines, go, wow, what's going to happen here? And then how slippery they can become, how evolved that they become in a short amount of time. Like you're saying that you see it consistent in its flavour and not changing a lot in the glass. But for me, once that wine, I've swallowed that wine, it's the way it draws me back in. Like if I feel like there's something going on, tingling in my mouth, it makes me, okay, I need to drink this again and again and again.
Which is good because you taste these wines so much during production than after. It's nice that you kind of still like drinking them.
Yeah.
I guess that's the whole point, isn't it?
We've gone much longer than we said we would.
That's true.
What are you going to cook tonight now that you've had all these bottles?
I got so much meat. I got camel ossobuco, but I also got 4 kilos of pork ribs. So pork with the Viognier. I might do something a bit more aromatic on it.
Yeah, right.
Tomorrow with the leftover reds, I will have camel ossobuco, Moroccan style.
Beautiful. We've got super normals, lobster burgers and Szechuan dumplings, vegetable dumplings tonight. We'll definitely have to slow cook something, maybe in the pizza oven tomorrow with the reds.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
When are these for sale?
These will be released on Monday the 7th?
I don't know. And the recently, since we last saw each other, you won Winemaker of the Year, which is really good. Do you have the trophy yet? Like, where's the plaque?
There's nothing. And I'm sure Gary's still laughing about it, that he has his...
Yet to see mine. No. Oh, well.
Nothing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Benjamin.
Goodbye, everybody.